Hi, this is Lara from Forex Info USA with your free daily US dollar index Elliott wave analysis for the trading session dated Monday the 5th of April. New York's, well, it wasn't open, but if it was, it would have been closed for about 7 hours now. It's about midnight New York time. I'm going to start this analysis as usual with a look at the bigger picture. Here's a chart going back to 1985. Dollar prices prior to 1985 were higher, and we can see a breakdown of 5 waves down, so I'm happy with this 5 labelled here for cycle degree. Following that, from 1992 to 2001, we had a really strong 3-wave look wave up for cycle degree wave A to end about 122 or so. Thereafter, we have another strong 3-wave look to end a cycle degree wave B that reaches below the beginning of wave A and is nicely contained in this trend channel drawn here using Elliott's channeling technique. I've drawn this from the start of A to the end of B, creating a parallel copy and placing it on the end of A. We've got a really clear breakout of this trend channel indicating that wave B at cycle degree was over in early 2008 and cycle degree wave C is underway. This is an expanded flat correction. It's a flat correction because A breaks down to a 3, B always breaks down to a 3. We can expect wave C should break down into a 5-wave impulse. It's an expanded flat because B reaches below the start of A. An expanded flat correction usually calls for a C wave that reaches substantially beyond the end of wave A, and if wave C ends up being 1.618 the length of wave A, because A was 43.5 long, that would take wave C right up to about 144.56, comfortably beyond the end of A. It remains to be seen if the dollar will get that high though, and that will take a few years. For the more immediate future, however, within this wave C, we've so far got primary 1 and 2 complete, and we're working on the early stages of a primary 3rd wave up. A common relationship between a 3rd wave and a 1st wave is a 1.618 Fibonacci relationship. If wave 3 ends up equaling 1.618 the length of wave 1, we can expect the dollar to rise to about 104.58 by the end of this year or sometime early next year. Taking you now to a regular daily chart, and I still have 2 wave counts for the dollar. One bullish and one bearish. Unfortunately, I don't like presenting a bullish and a bearish alongside. Unfortunately, at the moment, the situation with the dollar and the wave count is unclear. We may be around the end of a trend change at intermediate degree. I use black labels for that, and that may be the reason for the lack of clarity. It should be resolved fairly soon. Because Friday and Monday were Easter holidays for much of the world, the dollars remained trading within a fairly narrow band, without that much movement, mostly sideways, so we don't have clarity as soon as I expected. Probably another couple of days trading with all markets open should give us a bit of clarity. This main wave count says that we have 5 waves up to end wave 1 at intermediate degree from our low back down here. Thereafter we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waves up with reasonable relationships between these. Wave 1 blue is 0.45 less shorter than wave 3. Wave 3 is the longest in this wave count, and wave 1 is a reasonable amount shorter. There's no Fibonacci relationship between them, and they're too different to be considered equal. However, wave 5 has a very nice 0.07 less than 0.618 the length of wave 1. So it's 0.618 the length of this wave 1, which is a pretty good relationship between the two. I want to see a breach of this lower green trend line drawn here using Elliott's channeling technique again before I'm really confident that this is the correct wave count. This trend line, this channeling technique works really well for the dollar at blue or minor degree and above at intermediate degree as well. I've drawn this here with a trend line from the high of 1 to the high of 3, created a parallel copy and placed it on the low of 2. When we see a breach to the downside, we can have confirmation that wave 5 is over and we're in the next series of 3-wave corrective movements down. Our target for the downside, if this wave count is correct, remains the same at about 79.51 to 79.15 in the first instance. When it gets there, if it continues, I'll have another target zone. That's our first required target zone for this wave count. Wave 2 black should last at least a month and probably up to 2 months. Having a look at recent movement on an hourly chart for this main wave count, here's the end to that wave 5 blue and that wave 1 black here, and here's our recent corrective movement. Fairly nicely contained so far in a trend channel, although it's had a reasonable breakout recently. We may have had a 1, 2, and we're working on a third wave with the 1 and 2 I expect is not over. I'm counting a 5 waves up for A, a regular flat correction with a slightly truncated C for B, and if wave C orange within wave 2 green reaches equality with wave A, which is fairly likely, we may have a short-term target on the upside for this wave count, about 81.58. Both wave counts, my main and alternate, call for a little bit of upwards movement in the next 24 hours, so both wave counts are in line with that prediction. Thereafter, this interpretation calls for some strong downwards movement in a third wave of a third wave after that. This wave count is strongly invalidated with any movement above 81.68, this point right here. If the dollar moves above that point, there are very, very few interpretations of recent movement that give us a bearish outlook. If the dollar moves above 81.68, I'm going to be really close to discarding this main wave count and going simply with the alternate. I expect that will give us a little bit of clarity. We may be there fairly soon. Here's the alternate wave count, which sees wave 5 blue is not yet over, with a fairly long first wave and a fairly deep correction of a second wave that's had a nice bounce off this lower trend line. If this interpretation is correct, we should be seeing some really strong dollar rises above this point, 82.22, to make new dollar highs very soon, now all the markets are open. Taking you to a look at the hourly chart for recent movement of this interpretation, here's our long wave 1, still within wave 5 blue. Here's our ABC corrective, nicely contained in this trend channel. With the breakout of this trend channel and upwards movement, this interpretation is looking slightly more correct. As soon as we see movement above this point, 81.68, this interpretation will look much more likely. I have a shorter term target for the upside for wave 3 orange. First instance, about 81.58, where it will equal this wave 1 orange. However, possibly a more likely upwards target may lie about 81.97, which will also invalidate the main wave count. So that's a fairly likely target for this alternate wave count, where this wave 3 orange will have 1.618 the length of this wave 1, but anywhere within that upward zone. So both wave counts at this stage call for upwards movement for the dollar. Thereafter, what happens in the next couple of days hopefully should finally clarify the issue. Unfortunately, the holiday with Easter has just led to some sideways movement and no clarification between these wave counts. That should be over soon. I hope you had a fantastic Easter, everyone, and as always, may all your trades be profitable.